Welcome to Meet the Author, where you can join in on insightful conversations with best-selling and award-winning indie published authors. Your hosts today are Rob and Joan, who themselves are indie published authors, book publicists, and paranormal investigators with Tampa Bay Spirits, based in Tampa Bay, Florida. Thanks for dropping by. And now, on with the show.
Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Joan. We're so glad that you're here, whether you're watching us as the vodcast on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, or if you've tuned in later on and watched it as a download, or if you're listening the next day as a podcast. We're really glad you decided to be in our audience.
Most definitely. And it's almost Christmas.
I know.
We're halfway through December already.
Time
That's
flies.
Just crazy, right? Want to remind everybody about Episode Rewind this coming Saturday, December 16th. The episode will be episode 109, which starred Macy Lewis, very insightful author. That was a real fun show. Enjoyed that. Next Wednesday, December 20th, 7 o'clock right here, where you're watching right now, author and retired Hollywood scriptwriter George Dismukes will be on, along with the author-publisher Paul Hollis. And they're always a lot of fun.
That's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, and Paul's actually just published George's latest book, The Return of the Jaguar. So yes. You want to get a copy of that.
Long awaited, may I say. People really, I think like George just wanted a trilogy, but the public demanded a fourth one.
So the public is going to get it. So, and you should go get it too. Mm-hmm. And you are the public. So anyway, other podcasts that you should follow, a Voice of Indie podcast right after this show on Wednesday nights. It's on Blog Talk Radio. Your hosts are Beam Weeks and Gary G's. And if at the end of this show, we'll be running a little blurb on how to go over to that podcast. In addition, on a weekly basis on Wednesdays at 1 o'clock Central Time, you've got Book World with CJ Peterson and Mike Clifton, and that's on YouTube at CJ Peterson. So that's what we've got going on. Let's see.
Looks like we lost Ann.
Yeah, well, hopefully not permanently here. We're going to bring Ann in, but
Ann, if you can hear us, you're blacked out. There's no picture. Can you hear us, Ann?
Okay, so that's an auspicious start. What? Oh no, there we go. Hello.
Whoa.
That's one way to enter.
Sorry.
That's okay. Do we know what's going on?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, we went through a whole lot before
to get this far, people.
Before this recording. So everybody stay watching. Don't leave. This is going to be good.
Stay tuned.
There you go.
Do not leave.
There you go. All righty. So welcome.
Yes.
Ann.
Much. I am very pleased to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, we're glad that you're here. Let's see. So tell us a little bit about yourself, why you decided to write, how long you've been writing, that sort of thing.
Well, a little bit about myself is I am a native Georgian. I grew up mostly in Atlanta, and the Atlanta I knew was a very slow, sleepy southern town. It was way before it has morphed into the cosmopolitan center that it is today. I had a very small town kind of upbringing and the it's kind of a smallish town feel of Atlanta back in the 60s and 70s. Graduated from high school in DeKalb County in Georgia and went on to UGA and was an English major. And I've always loved reading. And I knew from a very young age I wanted to put something on paper for others to read. I started off reading Dr. Seuss books and I never stopped. The typical lover of Nancy Drew and Anne of Green Gables and all of those wonderful classics from my younger age. And when I went into high school, there wasn't YA, there wasn't really much middle grade back then. So you just kind of jumped to the adult books. And I was into family saga books, loved anything that had multiple books in a series. And I loved anything that had to do with history. When I went to UGA, it was hard for me to decide on my major. Did I want history? Did I want English? And English won out because I had a fabulous teacher, professor of American literature, and that just grabbed me. And that made me decide I wanted to go ahead and be a teacher and really wanted to teach American literature. Loved The Lost Generation, the Hemingway, Fitzgerald, loved me some Faulkner, loved Gothic, so Flannery O'Connor. So all of that propelled me through to the literature degree. And when I graduated, I got an offer to teach, and this was to show my age back in the late 70s, and it was for a whopping amount of $7,800. And I said, I don't think that's going to work. Don't own a car. I can't pay rent and insurance and everything on that. I can't do that. So I answered an advertisement to be a trainer at what used to be called Southern Bell. It's now Bell South, I think. I'm not sure. It's been through so many iterations, but I worked there for a decade, trained a lot of different users of different new software at the time, and met my husband and ended up not teaching for a decade. And then when I was expecting my first child, I thought, I think I want to resuscitate teaching, get that teaching certificate updated. So I had 2 children in 2 years. And then I went back for getting the rest of my certification. And I started teaching when my children went to school and have taught English for 30 years. Taught middle grade, high school, taught in the technical system of Georgia, and all English literature, loved it. And then I became an empty nester and thought, now's my time. I'm gonna write. I've always wanted to do this. And I had tried it one time before. In the year 2000, I wrote a little middle grade soccer book. It was kind of like babysitter series. And that was back when you had to put the manuscript in the envelope and mail it to the editor. And you had to include self-addressed stamped envelopes to get the rejection back, which I did very quickly. And who was I to think I could do this? And so I kind of let it simmer. And a few years later, after my youngest daughter went to college, I thought, okay, I'm going to try it again. And but this time I'm going to work through it from an academic perspective. I'm going to get my master's in fine arts in creative writing. So I did that with Spalding University, and I had not been traveled much. So I picked that low residency program because we went to Paris and London and Bath and Barcelona. And I was like, this is great. Getting all this wonderful tutorials on writing while I'm in these gorgeous places. And so my very first book that came out, Dangerous Conjurings, is a Gothic romance set right after the Civil War ends. And it was part of what I workshopped through my master's program. And the funny story behind that is I didn't know I was going to start fleshing this into a novel. I wrote a scene for a workshop that we were asked to write something supernatural. And I didn't really have anything supernatural. That wasn't like something I was going to write. But I wrote the scene, and after I came back from the workshop and we were all back working on our stuff for the next residency, I kept getting emails from people that had been in my workshops going, have you written any more? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? I thought, oh, I don't know what's going to happen. I didn't know I was going to be doing anything else with this. But because so many were so interested, I decided that I would put my full focus on developing that into a romance. And so that's where that whole genesis of that novel came, is trying to make it into something other than just one scene. And I think I really worried my Barnes and Noble and my librarian for all the voodoo books I kept ordering and spells and everything. They were like, what exactly are you doing? But I walked on the dark side of voodoo and hoodoo for a while there and met Queen Marie Laveau from New Orleans, who was the queen of the voodoo in New Orleans at that era in history. So I had a lot of fun writing that book, and that became my pain to all my Gothic books I read growing up, the Daphne du Maurier, and so I enjoyed that quite a bit. And then
did you have any dark after effects of that encounter?
No, but it's a scary thing to delve into, and it was very interesting to understand the hoodoo apart from the voodoo.
Right.
And a lot of that stories came from my mom. My mom grew up in Charleston, and her dad was a insurance salesman for the Life of Georgia, and they lived in Charleston. And her dad would go to visit the Geechee Gullah community because nobody else would go. Everyone else was like, no, we don't understand what they say. There's, we are not what's going on with that culture. And so my mom as a little girl would ride with her dad to go visit that community. And she would tell me all these stories. And I thought, oh, I've got to do something with that. And that was another thing that pleased me, is that I could bring some of my mother's background of what she experienced and turned it into my Geechee Gullah. Actually, she's my villain of the story, but she's a very interesting character named Callie Despierre. And so the whole thing was just kind of bringing bits and pieces of things I'd heard growing up in the South, and learning so much about the positive things about hoodoo was very interesting. How they used all the natural remedies that they would find in the fields with herbs and shrubs, and make these potions that would cure people. And I thought that maybe I was meant to write something like this because I live on a cul-de-sac by the name of Yarrow Bluff, and yarrow was one of the medicinal things used back in the day. So I thought, all of these things are just kind of lining into this book. But
Have you ever gone to see Marie's tomb in
Yes.
Rio too? People still leave offerings there every day.
They do. And I read several different books about her background and how they thought she was immortal, because there was Queen Laveau, and then her daughter, who looked so much like her. Once she died, she took on that persona, and people thought, oh, it's the same person, and she's living this immortal life. So that was very interesting.
Yeah.
And the original queen, Marie Laveau, kind of ran New Orleans with an iron fist. She had
that's for sure.
She had the priest and the mayor and everybody under her thumb. And
people are still afraid of her.
Excuse me?
I said people are still afraid of her.
Oh, yes. Yeah. That she really did put the fear of everything into people. And
Not the fear of God.
so she's taken quite aback by her.
So let me ask you a question that I know that our audience always wants to know. And that is, do you know the difference between a plotter and a pantser?
Oh, definitely.
Are you a pantser or a plotter?
I'm kind of a plantser.
We're kind of plantsers too.
I have in my mind where I know the story will start and end. And what gets you in trouble is that muddy middle. So the start and the end is not that difficult, but trying to get through the whole book to the end is what, if I didn't do some plotting, I don't think I'd ever be able to hang it together. But one thing I learned in my master's program from Sina Jeter Naslin, who wrote Ahab's Wife. I don't know if you're familiar with that book, but it was a very prize-winning book, gorgeous book. And it's about Captain Ahab's wife from Moby Dick. And Sina gave this talk one time, and it was so helpful to me. And it was about writing anchor scenes. So once you get the beginning going, and you know there's certain places the story's going to go, then go ahead and write those scenes. And then they're your anchor throughout writing. And then you write to that anchor scene. And then the other anchor is dropped and you write to that anchor scene. So that idea of approaching plotting out a book has been very helpful to me, is to make those anchor. You already can cinematically see them in your mind, but you got to get to them with words. So
yeah.
that's
Lots of words. Yeah. Lots of engaging words that people want to continue reading. Yes. Yeah. That's the job, right?
That is the job.
Do you find that your characters actually run the story and that they take you places you didn't expect to go?
Oh, so much.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of my writer friends will have a character come to them, and then it's this great character and they know they want to do something, but they don't have the story. Mine is the reverse. I have the story, and the character's kind of my stand-in as my mind is reeling through this story. And then I have to stop and totally develop who my characters will be that are going to run through the story. And as I start to write, that's where they surprise me, because there's always twists and turns that happen that I don't foresee until I really start putting that character into the story, and that character starts leading me as much as I'm leading the character.
That's right. That's right. It's a crazy thing, but it happens. And
it does.
And our characters are very real, aren't they? They're real
talk
people.
They walk with you. Yes.
We got to hope they never go on strike.
No. They also interrupt our sleep.
Yes, they do. They keep us awake, don't they?
Wake you up in the middle of the night and say, this is what we've got to do. And you're like, I just want to sleep. Okay.
Strange times, you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's time for our first break. And so we'll take that. And then when we come back, why don't we enjoy a passage from one of your books?
Sounds like a good idea.
All right. Nobody go away. We'll also be having a book giveaway in a little while. So stay tuned, everybody. There's lots to come.
It's every parent's worst nightmare. Police officer Madison Jackson awakes to discover her baby kidnapped from her crib. Was it revenge for someone she arrested, or something far more sinister? Madison's estranged husband is incarcerated in Supermax. As the second in command of a deadly Mexican cartel, did he issue the order to abduct their daughter? Bye, Baby, Bye, from author Kelly Marshall. Get your copy today.
Paradise, my prison. Charlie Flint awakens from a deep sleep and finds himself alone on a tropical beach surrounded by a palm tree jungle and exotic animals. He cannot remember who he is or anything about his life. First, he must find food and build shelter and protect himself from hidden dangers. As his memory gradually returns, it reveals what a very flawed person he is. A man who made too many mistakes, made too many enemies. The implications of the truth are staggering. How did Charlie get there? And will he save himself? Paradise My Prison is the riveting new suspense thriller from retired Hollywood scriptwriter George Dismukes. Paradise My Prison by George Dismukes is available in jacketed hardcover, softcover, and all ebook formats worldwide.
The clock is ticking. Can Gracie uncover the truth?
Philip Pliant is the wealthy opportunist plastics dealer and CEO of Pliant Industries. He's also a master thief, creating a pervasive threat to the manufacturing infrastructure in the Caribbean islands markets. With the cartel as his stealth client, the naive city leaders have been seduced, enabling the production of more than three-dimensional building materials.
The expected profits are monstrous.
Is the art group, now led by Gracie and the family heirs, strong enough to win against this predator?
Can JJ's cats act on the root cause analysis in time?
Will Gracie be able to squash Pliant and the cartels?
Gracie never considered their lives would hang in the balance. The clock is ticking. 5, 4, 3.
Okay, we're back, and we're going to have a reading from A Christmas Cannoli Kiss. You can see the cover here. It's really cute. And then I think after that, maybe we'll have you tell us about some of your other books. You've already given us quite a nice picture of Dangerous Conjurings, and we'll talk a little bit about your other novels. But first, why don't you read from this?
Okay, here is the beginning of A Christmas Cannoli Kiss, which is a sweet, closed-door contemporary romance. Chapter 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Pittsburgh. The local time is 4:13 p.m., and the temperature is a chilly 34 degrees with light snow. Thank you for flying with us. Isabella's heart knocked against her chest, thumping in time with the tires as the plane taxied to the gate. She stashed her purchase of the latest thriller from the Miami Airport bookstore into her handbag before craning her neck to peer out the window. At the sight of snow, little girl excitement chased through her. A white Christmas to welcome her return after living in balmy Florida could not be more perfect. The plane's sudden lurch to a stop jostled Isabella. The same flight attendant's voice came across the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened while we wait for a gate. We apologize for the delay. The elder lady seated at the window seat awakened and stretched her body long. Isabella preferred napping seat partners like hers, snores and all. She dreaded when initial chit-chat with a stranger droned on, keeping her from reading. Mobile phones came to life. Voices rose through the cabin in one-way conversations. Isabella moved hers off airplane mode and scrolled through the group text she started with her close friends that morning. They'd filled the thread with celebratory welcome home messages containing clapping hands, party hats, and thumbs-up emojis, each text bursting with confetti, balloons, or other fun effects. Isabella hoped their excited responses meant they'd forgiven her abrupt departure after she accepted her company's transfer to Miami 2 years ago. She hadn't meant to worry those she held dear. Their reactions about her relocation had been upsetting. It's so soon after losing your parents to make your major life decision. You shouldn't live alone, away from those who grieve the loss of Dottie and Rico with you. The neighborhood won't be the same without the Lorenzo family. None understood how the most shattering experiences of her life so deeply affected her. Too many memories resided in every corner of Pittsburgh, especially her Little Italy neighborhood of Bloomfield and the intersection where the fatal car accident happened. She needed emotional space, and the job in Miami provided it. The time away helped. She gained perspective about loss in life. 2 things resonated most true. 1, grief found you, no matter where you lived. 2, life was too short not to pursue your dream, whatever it might be. What better time than now to chase hers? No entanglements claimed her, not even a pet. Frugal living and a small inheritance meant she could afford a short employment sabbatical from being a brand manager while she explored a career change, a life change, really. Her now awake seat partner engaged in a loud phone call regarding where to meet her ride. Isabella continued swiping through her texts, trying to ignore the woman's annoyed tone. Thank heaven I rented a car. I don't have to coordinate with anyone for a ride. Plus, I'll see the sights of my home city while driving to Beth's house. When the woman clicked off her cell, Isabella lifted a silent hallelujah. Closing her text, she smiled at the screensaver photo of her with Beth and their other girlfriends taken in Las Vegas at the bachelorette trip a couple of months ago. Not everyone remained best friends forever with those from childhood, and she counted herself fortunate. She loved this candid shot, snapped by a stranger they'd asked to take it. The Vegas trip marked the sole time she'd been with her friends since her move to Miami. They stood bunched together in the hotel's pool. Anna and Kate and bride-to-be Jen stood in the middle, all three model tall and blonde. She and Beth, two petite brunettes, bookended the group. Isabella stared at herself in the photo for a moment. At age 32, she would hold the title Last Single Girl Standing after Jen's wedding in 2 weeks on New Year's Eve. That fact did not bother her. While she hoped for someone with whom to share her life someday, she embraced the philosophy of better alone and happy with yourself than unhappy with the wrong someone. I know about wrong someones. Steve, great guy, but not my forever one. Memories of the broken engagement prompted Isabella to focus once again on the couple seated one row up and across the aisle. When they boarded, laughing and flirting with each other, she'd noticed they wore matching college sweatshirts, like Steve and she always wore. She used to regale everyone about how Steve and she met through an act of serendipity, arriving at the college employment office at the same time during their senior year to schedule interviews. He was young Tom Hanks cute and easygoing. They fell into dating, which progressed to a live-together, drama-free relationship. She accepted his proposal as if on autopilot. Isabella rested her head back, breathing against the stuffiness of the cabin and the bittersweetness of her memories. Perspiration beaded upon her upper lip the way it did on that day she tried on wedding dresses in front of the bridal store mirror. Instead of exhilaration, her face reflected resignation. How could she ignore that stark revelation? She couldn't say yes to the dress or marriage. Steve thanked her a year later after he married his true soulmate. He found his happily ever after. The plane resumed its taxi to the gate, jolting Isabella out of her memories of the wedding that never happened. She lifted her face toward the welcoming airflow streaming from the vent overhead before fishing in her purse for her cosmetic pouch. Isabella touched the jewelry box she'd placed in it for safekeeping during her move. Her throat closed and she blinked against welling tears. Maybe one day I'll be able to wear this necklace. She pulled out her compact, tube of lipstick, and small hairbrush and redirected her attention to refreshing her makeup and running a brush through her thick hair. With a sigh, she snapped shut the compact and returned the items to the pouch, resigned to looking travel-weary. Isabella tossed the pouch in her bag and shifted in her seat, wondering if the plane would ever reach the gate. She gazed at that couple once again. They were in a long kiss, their passion for each other pulsating through the cabin toward her. I want that in a relationship. Zing, not settling for any man in order to sport a ring on my left hand. Attending Jen's wedding without a +1 didn't faze her. However, she did quake with fear over her agreement to bake Dottie's legendary cannoli cookies for the reception's cookie table, a Pittsburgh wedding tradition. She once again checked inside her handbook for the recipe to assure herself she hadn't lost it. It dated back to Isabella's maternal great-great-grandmother, Isabella de Rosa, whose first name she shared. The family matriarch recorded the cookie recipe in her spidery cursive for her daughter Francesca to bring to America. It made its way to Mom and now her. Isabella's stomach swirled at the thought of the baking task ahead. Her friends joked she couldn't turn out edible cookies from store-bought dough. Why did she believe she could produce Mom's famous cannoli ones? Not even Angie Fontana's tasted as fabulous. Thinking about Angie calmed Isabella's insides. Purchasing Angie's canola cookies from Fontana's Corner Bakery would be her backup if hers ended in disaster. She couldn't wait to see the Fontanas again. Sal and Angie were the grandparents she'd never known. In their 80s, they remained dynamos, rising at dawn 6 days a week to bake their delicious breads, pastries, and cookies. When she told them of her move back, she knew their joy for her decision. She knew from the joy of their joy that her decision was the right one. The pilot guided the plane into its assigned bay. Passengers sprang into action before the forward motion ceased. Isabella caught their sense of urgency to disembark. She unfastened her seatbelt, sidestepped into the aisle, and donned her winter puffer coat. Its weight felt like an anchor after 2 years of wearing light clothing. She moved the clothes shopping trip to the top of her long to-do list. In her anticipation of visits home, she kept the coat, the fur-lined boots on her feet, and a select few winter outfits, including the knit sweater and skinny corduroy pants she wore. Her workaholic Miami lifestyle consumed her. Vacation time went unused, trips home never happened. Her body and mind needed this respite from obligation. After zipping her coat, Isabella opened the overhead bin and yanked at her suitcase. It didn't budge. Someone had crammed a too large bag into the overhead compartment against hers. How did you get away with jamming this monstrosity in here? The flight attendant should have made you check it. Her seat partner relocated to the edge of Isabella's seat. She resembled a runner at the start line, crouched for a fast takeoff. Sorry, Isabella pressed her lips into a tight grin. I'll be out of your way in a minute. She tugged once more with force on her bag, sending it plunging toward her head. Duck! Isabella instinctively obeyed the order barked by the man behind her. His muscular arm flew out to block the suitcase's downward trajectory. He wrestled it to the cabin floor. Wow, thanks. Isabella gazed into the twinkling blue eyes of a tall and fantastically good-looking man. He wore an attractive scruff of beard and an engaging smile. A leather messenger briefcase hung across his broad shoulders. Have I been knocked unconscious? Time traveled into my past? I know this guy. Who forgets their first crush? Nate? Nate Elliott? Yes, he stared for an overlong moment. Isabella Lorenzo? I can't believe it.
That's excellent. And there you have it. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so I didn't know cannolis could be made into cookies.
Well, interesting fact on that. I didn't either. This book was written in response to a call for a Christmas cookie book for a series of romances that were published by the Wild Rose Press.
Okay.
And have cookie in the title, and there had to be the famous baking scene in the book, and the cookie had to play into the story. And I racked my brain over what cookies. There's, everyone's going to do the standard cookies, snickerdoodles, the whole gingerbread, everything. Well, my mother-in-law, Dolly, was her nickname she went by, loved cannolis. So I thought, oh, it's too bad I can't use cannolis because, oh man, my Italian mother-in-law, she loved cannolis. I started researching and I found out that there were cannoli cookies.
I found that out while you were reading. I looked it up. I found a couple of recipes. I was like, dang, I'm going to have to try this now.
We are.
We are.
No doubt about that. Yeah.
Made with ricotta cheese. Goodness.
One of the requirements of the book is that you had to have a recipe in the book that was not copied. It had to be an original recipe. So my youngest daughter is quite a baker, and she and I spent a long time tweaking and trying to get a cannoli cookie recipe. We took some basics off of some different recipes, but it had to be our own. And so we went through a lot of eating a lot of cannoli cookies for this.
Oh, that's so sad.
Gee, that's tough. Really rough research. Our research is not as exciting for paranormal books or murder mysteries.
Yeah.
No, this was fun than researching the hoodoo and voodoo, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, that was fun, and I learned something new. That's really funny that you didn't know either. I was like, wait, what? A cannoli cookie?
I did.
What is happening here? Oh, dear. That was really good. So, dun, dun, dun. Now we know who the love interest is. Or at least we think we do.
Yeah.
You'll have to read the book to find out.
Yeah.
So why don't we go over where...
Yeah, I love second chance romances, and it's always intriguing to have stories about people that have been apart for whatever reason and have come back together. So that's kind of at the basis of the story.
Yes, and it's a good basis. All right, let's show people how to get in touch with you, and then I guess after the commercials we can go into all the rest of her
The other
books.
2 books, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, I will find it. All right, here we go. All right, Anne's website is called ArmisteadAuthor.com. And if you're listening on a podcast and you can't see this little bubble that has all the information here, let me spell it for you. It's AnneArmisteadAuthor.com. All right. And if you go to her website, you can find all of her links to all of her social medias and her books and what's new, I would imagine, and all that kind of good stuff.
Absolutely.
And her email is Anne@AnneArmisteadAuthor.com. And that's all spelled the exact same way.
Same way.
And with an E, something different, right? It's
Right.
very nice.
And speaking of Christmas cannolis,
Yep.
we're going to have our book giveaway now. And it's the first 3 people to email Anne@AnneArmisteadAuthor.com will win an ebook copy of A Christmas Cannoli Kiss.
And I just want to repeat again that email address is Anne@AnneArmisteadAuthor.com.
Now, if you're listening to this or watching this days later, even go ahead and shoot her an email. Weeks later, months later, even, go ahead and shoot her an email. There may be extra copies that are available. And Anne always likes to hear from people that are interested in her work. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I would love to hear from you. And on my website, you can sign up for my newsletter as well. And there's always recipes in my newsletter.
That's good.
That's a plus, right?
That is a big plus. Do you do a lot of research for the recipes, or do you use tried and true recipes?
I pretty much use things that are on the internet that I can provide the YouTube and the link to. I love to watch people prepare the recipes rather than just go by the written word. So I use different websites from different recipe web people that have all sorts of things out there.
That's really, I guess we're really all different, because I just want the recipe. I always go to jump to recipe. I don't want you showing me how to do it. I just want to do it myself.
I found that I enjoy cooking a lot more now that I can watch people as they're preparing rather than just look at the words. So I guess it's in your own style of how you react to things.
Oh, it is. That's the great thing about life, right? We're all different. It'd be pretty boring if we were all the same.
Very boring.
Yeah, we all have different life experiences and different reasons why we are the way we are,
So that brings us to our last set of commercials here. So if you'll hang on just a second, we'll get a word from our sponsors. And when we come back, we'll talk about your other 2 books that you've got out there and maybe something about what you've got on the drawing board.
Okay.
So don't go away, folks.
It's 1919, and Eric Laska returns from the war in Europe. 2 new enemies await him in the small coal mining town he calls home. One is a threat to his relationship with Rebecca, the love of his life. The other, a bloodthirsty beast, is stalking the mining town residents. The townspeople suspect Eric of one of the killings. An old man and Rebecca's 11-year-old sister have seen the beast, but only Eric believes their story. To protect the town and clear his name, he's forced to prove the werewolf exists. Available on Amazon. The Horror Within by Marjorie Swift Doring.
Many secrets are hidden within the darkness of the jungle. Behold, this one about a man, a woman, a black jaguar, and an ancient Maya legend. Two Faces of the Jaguar is a novel by George Dismukes that will take you deep into the jungle and capture your imagination until the last word. Two Faces of the Jaguar is book one of a trilogy. Two Faces of the Jaguar, where only the adventurous dare to read.
Two Faces of the Jaguar, The Lost City, and The Jaguar's Quest are available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and many other bookseller websites. Two Faces of the Jaguar, the book people are talking about. Get your copy today.
And we're back. All right. Why don't you tell us a little bit about With Kisses from Cecile?
With Kisses from Cecile poured out of the heart of myself and my collaborator, Jan Agnello. We met over a decade ago at an Atlanta Writers Club meeting, and she had these beautiful letters from Cecile to her grandmother, Ruth, and were written at the end of World War I. Cecile lived in Paris. She lived through all the bombings, everything that happened to Paris in World War I. And she was around 18, and she wanted to learn English, and she signed up for a pen pal. And on the other end, in America, was Jan's grandmother, Ruth. And Ruth signed up for a pen pal, and did not get one, but Ruth's friend got one. And the friend decided she didn't want the responsibility, so she gave the pen pal to Ruth. And Cecile and Ruth started corresponding. And we have Cecile's gorgeous letters. They were written in English, but just think of a young teen Cecile speaking the English as a little Parisian would be speaking it, and that little voice gets in your ear. And her letters just brimmed with joy of love, excitement of anything American. She loved Charlie Chaplin. She loved Jack Dempsey, who was a boxer. She wrote about seeing the Yanks on the subway trains and having crushes on different American soldiers. The letters are just a delight. And she illustrated. She was a very good artist, and she illustrated and sent these to Ruth. Of course, we don't, unfortunately, have Ruth's letters back, but Jan knew her grandmother's story, which had a lot of tragedy in it, as did Cecile's story. So we merged these two stories together, and we framed them in a second chance romance contemporary backdrop of Ruth's granddaughter trying to come up with a way to accept something that had happened in her life. And Ruth takes her over to see Cecile's grave, and she reads these letters. So it kind of has multi-generational women all facing tragedies and having to have the strength to step into those tragedies and live life and make things work better when you think things will never work better again. And Cecile's life is one that once you step into her shoes through her letters, it's just a delight to read everything about Cecile. So Jan and I shared this love of Cecile. And Jan is a jewelry designer, and she wanted to make a necklace that would be sold with the book. So that was our beginning of doing this. And she's an antiquer, and she was selling the necklace and the book at antique markets where she had her antique booth. And so then everything was going great until COVID, and everything kind of dismantled at that point because there were no meeting in person antique booths or anything. But we had a great idea there. We were going to write more stories with more pieces of jewelry connected to them, but that kind of didn't happen. But this book won the Historical Fiction Award for Independent Authors. And so we feel very proud of it. And we're very pleased to get this beautiful story of Cecile and Ruth out to readers. Our target market, we think, is older women maybe, and even the from 30s and up, but people that have had things in their lives that have been difficult to overcome. We feel like this is a motivationally inspiring story for people to read. So it was just a labor of love, and it took us a while to get it out there. We self-pubbed it because we didn't feel like it was a traditional story that would be easily understood by traditional agents, editors, etc. So we did it on our own, and we're very proud of it. So
the necklace on the paper, on the cover, is that the actual necklace?
It's stunning. It's gorgeous.
So that's the actual necklace.
That is the actual necklace. Yeah.
That's a brilliant idea.
Yeah. So
that brings us to a tryst in Paris.
Well,
speaking of Paris.
See the Parisian theme here going? I had done so much research for with Kisses from Cecile about Paris, and of course, who doesn't love Paris anyway? Or
the idea of Paris, anyhow.
Anything.
Right?
So I had lived through everything in Paris from the middle of World War I up till about 1922. I thought, I'm going to write another book based in Paris. And I started researching, wasn't exactly sure what time era. I landed in 1900 Paris because in 1900 Paris, there was a world exhibition, and it was the start of a new century. And unbelievable things were being displayed and demonstrated at this exhibition. So I've always been intrigued by time travel. Always would love to go back and step into an actual past experience back in time. And I thought, I'm going to write a time travel. And it's going to take my protagonist to 1900 Paris. And she's going to get involved in a lot of stuff that she has to find the answers to before her time shifter will let her come back to present day time. And her mother is very ill, and she needs to get back to her mom. So that's her motivation. But then she meets Jacques, and of course, as you know, typical, it's like, I'm falling in love, but yet it's 1900 and I don't belong to 1900 Paris, and I need to get back and help my mom. And there's a lot of angst involved in the romance and a lot of hard decisions my protagonist has to make. But she meets all sorts of wonderful people back in 1900 Paris. She gets involved with the silent motion picture industry that was just beginning. She goes through all these different exhibits at the exhibition and meets different people that way, all trying to solve the issues that she has to get the answers to back then. So I had so much fun keeping on my big TV screen these YouTubes that were actual movies of 1900 Paris that you can find all over YouTube. But it helped me step into that time and into that fashion. And so I just felt like I lived in 1900 Paris for the to write that book.
You time traveled.
You time traveled. That's what books do, though. They let us time travel to the past and the future, and also out to the stars. So, you know, reading is wonderful. Right. Everyone should read.
Speaking of the future, what do you have on the drawing board? Anything?
Well, when I worked with Soulmate Publishing, who published Dangerous Conjurings and published A Tryst in Paris, she is interested in 2 more time travels to continue my protagonist's story. So I'm working on a lot of digging around on that, which I think my protagonist is going back in 1925. So she'll meet Hemingway and Faulkner and Coco Chanel and all sorts of awesome people in 1925 Paris. So I'm working on that. And then I'm working on writing another Christmas romance that will be set where there'll be 3 books to it. It's going to be in the same setting with 3 different romances.
Nice.
Interesting.
Nice.
Interesting.
And I know also you wanted to talk about this, be someone's second chance.
I do. This is a nonprofit organization that I am on the board for, and it's called the Feeney Legacy Project. Feeney was my nephew. Unfortunately, he died at age 33, April a year ago. He had a cardiac arrest, and although there were witnesses to the cardiac arrest, there was no one that came forth to do anything, to call 911, to try to start CPR. We don't know if that would have made a difference. Statistically, when you have a total cardiac arrest, even getting resuscitated is not a guarantee that you will have longevity or even make it to pass to the hospital. But if you're not trying to give someone a second chance, you don't know if the second chance will be there. So my sister-in-law, in her grieving over the loss of her son, she knew she wanted to do something. And so she started this foundation, which is called the Feeney Legacy Project. And our message that we want to get out there is to be someone's second chance. We are advocating calling 911 and using hands-only CPR. You don't have to do it right. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to breathe into the person's mouth. Your hands, the power is in your hands. So just whatever you can do, do. And is first and foremost.
Especially call 911.
Mm-hmm. That step you through whatever. They also will tell you if there's an AED near you, which defibrillator that will help get them started. They know where they are. You don't. And if you have someone with you, you say, you call 911. Don't leave it up to somebody. Oh, are you talking to me or whatever? You need to be very specific in giving that directive to whoever's there, and put it on speaker, and the operator will help you go through what you need to do. And if there is a AED around, they'll tell you where it is. And it's very simple to use. Just follow the directions.
We've come across a few accidents, actually, which is really odd. But one, I remember we were walking our kids. We were going to pick up our kids from school. We had walked because their school was close. And a car had overturned. And there was a man just walking in circles. And he was swearing a lot. But that happens with a traumatic brain injury. They can't help what they're saying. They don't even know what they're saying. And there was a whole group of people watching. And so Rob yelled, has anyone called 911? And this is pre-mobile phone, cell phones. And no one had. So he yelled at them, call 911. And I went over and I got the man and I brought him over to the curb and I told him to sit down and I told him help was coming. And because the people had called 911, the fire trucks got there very quickly. And their, emergency medical team was there very quickly. And then they asked me to stay with him because I'd been able to calm him down, and they were able to put a collar on him and stop him from moving. And he was a big guy and everybody was afraid of him. But, you just need to, be that person that is going to help somebody, and I think that people are like in shock and they don't know what to do and they don't want to do the wrong things. So don't worry about that. Make sure somebody gets help, In
my nephew's case, there were drugs involved, and the people that were with him, I think, had a lot of fear of that from a legal perspective, which is another thing our nonprofit advocates knowledge about, is the Good Samaritan law and the 911 amnesty law. And that, if you try in good faith to help someone, then that means you're not legally liable. And if you are in possession of an illegal substance, you're not going to be arrested. The police will tell you they're more focused on saving the person's life than arresting someone that's standing there that might have drugs on them. So there are.
I think now, aren't they going to be selling Narcan over the counter?
Well, Narcan works, and police and paramedics have it, and a lot of young adults are now starting to carry the Narcan with them. One of the things you have to understand about Narcan is it works on opioids. It's not cocaine, it's not alcohol,
Right.
it's opioids. So that was something that was a confusing factor with my nephew. And secondly, you don't just let them sniff the Narcan and walk away and leave them. They can relapse very easily, especially because opioids slow your whole system down. And that's one of the reasons that when you do CPR for an opioid overdose, you do need to do the breathing, because they are not breathing. Their whole body is just shutting down little by little, meaning that their lungs are not filling with air and they're not breathing. But again, doing hands-only CPR is better than doing nothing. So,
Yeah.
Right.
And like we said, calling 911 is the most important thing you can do.
So is Second Chance, are people able to make donations? And
yeah. If you go to our website, Feeney Legacy, FeeneyLegacyProject.org, you will see donate buttons on the website that you can donate whatever you can afford to donate. And what we use the money for is to create public relations information, marketing information. We're also doing a run in April to raise some money. And also we're trying to fund AEDs in areas that have none or have not, like underprivileged schools a lot of times don't have AEDs, like more finance schools might have. AEDs, it's amazing how many young people collapse with cardiac arrest for varying reasons. And if you don't have an AED, you're lessening the survival opportunity for that person.
An allergic reaction, anaphylactic shock. You can have cardiac arrest and need to be resuscitated.
Right.
I know this from personal experience. It happened to me. But
oh my, yes. But if you do visit the website, there's a lot of information on it about the Good Samaritan law, the 911 amnesty law. There are videos there that help you learn CPR. It's the hands-only CPR. So there's a lot of good reference and resource materials on that site.
Okay, so for those that are just listening to the podcast, it's the address, email, or the website is FeeneyLegacyProject.org. That's FeeneyLegacyProject.org.
And what a wonderful way for your sister-in-law to remember her son and to work out her grief, and how great that you're involved with it. You know, kudos to you.
Oh, well, I've become very involved in not only this particular nonprofit, but if you visit my website, I have a page on my website of all the different nonprofits that I support. So feel free to look at those. One Warm Coat is one that I would like to bring up because we're going into the colder weather. And One Warm Coat is trying to provide outerwear to people that don't have the appropriate outerwear. So I do support a lot of different nonprofits. So please visit my website for that page.
So once again, her website is AnnArmistadAuthor.com. AnnArmistadAuthor. Okay. Well, this has been really wonderful. Thank you for being on the show.
I appreciate you having me.
Well, we've really enjoyed it. And what we're going to do is we're going to move you over to the side now. So hold on. Oh, okay. Didn't lose you. Want to remind everybody, next Saturday episode rewind right where you're at right now. That'll be Saturday, December 16th, to enjoy Macy Lewis's episode 109. And then next Wednesday, a week from tonight, December 20th, at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, author and retired Hollywood scriptwriter George Dismukes is joined by author and publisher Paul Hollis for a good time prior to Christmas.
You know it's going to be a fun show when we have those two on.
Always.
Together.
Always. So that is something to look forward to.
Yeah.
It's our Christmas gift to you guys.
And it's been great having Ann on, not just hearing about her books, but hearing about Feeney Legacy Project and her other charities.
Absolutely. Very interesting.
Very important.
And so we're going to let everybody go time travel now. And until next time.
That's all, folks.
Good night, all.
Live every Wednesday, your Voice of Indie hosts Beam Weeks and Stephen Gees welcome authors, musicians, publishing industry pros, artists, and assorted creative guests for an exciting interactive hour. Call in during the show or post questions and comments on Twitter for responses in real time. Meet your favorite indie creators, learn inside tips, network, and promote your work. The link for each week's show is pinned on Twitter atop @VoiceOfIndie. And you can receive the link every Wednesday morning in your inbox by subscribing to our newsletter at freshinkgroup.com. Check out Voice of Indie every Wednesday on Blog Talk Radio and catch hundreds of episodes archived everywhere from our websites to our YouTube channel and Spotify.
Thank you for joining us here on Meet the Author. Make sure you stay up to date with our show by clicking like, follow, and share. And you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and more. See you next time on WLFE-DB.com.
You've been listening to WLFE-DB.com, where our shows